I appreciate the honor to be invited. I especially appreciate being up here with Congressman Waters, Mayor Tanaka, Assembly members, and staff of the City of Gardena who have been extremely supportive to the Los Angeles Vet Center and our mission. Also to the VFW posts and your commanders, and especially our veterans out there. I have a warm place for the Nisei veterans that I got introduced to when I joined the Los Angeles Vet Center. The previous team leader, and I'm sure a lot of you know, Jason Young, was pretty outspoken and very instrumental in advocating for that group. But I do appreciate the band, because in high school, I was in the band. And when I went into the Navy in boot camp, I was also in the Navy band. So if you join the service, tell them you're in the band. And it was good duty. Got out of scullery duty being in the band. Also, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all about Veterans Day. As Congressman Waters said earlier, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, on Armistice Day, was the cessation of hostilities before the end of World War I, the war that was supposed to end all wars. And as you see in England, I think this weekend, the celebration of the loss just of the English soldiers, over 800,000, which is pretty dramatic considering how many people in the world, that was just the English casualties during that war. But there have been casualties all along as we go and fight conflicts for freedom. My main point when I wanted to talk about Veterans Day is who is a veteran? What are their sacrifices? How do we honor them? And what is their meaning of duty? Veterans are members of the armed services, be it a reservist or an active duty soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine. There's also National Guardsmen. All those people are veterans once they complete their contract, and they complete it honorably. How they identify themselves is different. Not all veterans identify themselves readily. A lot of veterans do it with hats, as we can see in the audience, some with pins, patches, they wear with pride. Others you'll never know unless you ask, and even then, they might not acknowledge it. One of the studies just recently of female veterans, which we don't talk about very much, is a lot of them, if you ask them if they're a veteran, won't respond to that statement. But they will respond to, have you served? And it's always in the question of how to find out who's a veteran, how you ask that question. Sacrifice. A lot of times, a veteran, when they go into the service, even though they were in the band, there's some changes. Their worldview changes because they see the world in a lot of different ways, some good, but some not so good. They sacrifice their time with family, and their family's time with them, being missing a birth of a brand new child or a birth of another child. Sometimes the death of a family member that was loved. They sacrifice that. A lot of times they sacrifice their health, as we see with returning veterans, that the most visible ones are the ones that have amputations, but it's the invisible wounds that you don't see very much. They sacrifice their sense of what's right and wrong and how that has changed for them. Because when they go to war, not all veterans do, but when they go to war, things change for them. And some of them pay the ultimate sacrifice, their lives. Remembering, as you do today, quite well, I might say, those with honor, the veterans, just the remembrance is one aspect of how we can honor their sacrifice. I also like to bring up those that come back with other than honorable discharges. It's good to remember them too sometimes. Those individuals that have less than honorable discharges, sometimes it's because of what they saw or what they experienced that they made some mistakes along the way. And so they come out with less than honorable discharges, but yet they served honorably. So I'd like to remember them because I do deal with them. And I know, Maxine Waters, your office has helped me in trying to help some of those veterans regain some of that honor that they lost in that process. When we talk about honoring veterans, we ask them to share their experiences like some of you are doing today. They don't very rarely or readily do that, but sometimes they'll share their experience with acquaintances, friends, family, but mostly with fellow soldiers. And I use soldiers to incorporate all military personnel. I'm not leaving out anybody. One of the ways we can honor veterans is hire them. Give them a job. When these gentlemen and women come home, a lot of times when they're transitioning out of the service, they are looking for a new purpose. And by hiring them, you'll be amazed by their work ethic. They're amazing at their experience and leadership abilities. I'll give an example. My experience with a family member going through an ER, one of the nurses was giving a little bit above and beyond service to my family member. And I was sitting there and I was watching and I was observing, and I noticed their age group was probably in the late 50s, early 60s. And he had a ponytail, that's what got me going. I asked him, I said, "Have you served?" And he paused for a moment and he responded, "How did you know?" And I said, "There was something about you in your service, how you went above and beyond to give service to my loved one, that I just recognized one of those qualities in a veteran." So by hiring them, you make yourself available to some of the great experiences that you'll have and they'll bring to your company. One of the other ways of honoring them is asking them to share. You know, bringing them to your church group, see if they'll share their experiences. Taking the time to listen. One of the things I was a combat stress officer, and what my job in Iraq was to debrief soldiers and their platoons and companies after a disaster happened. That was just one of my jobs. But after it happened, I would go to them and explain the process of what it's going to be like for them. And I told them some of those experiences might be painful, and when you come home, certain things will trigger those painful memories. But asking them to share some of their better memories, because there are. Even in times of war, there are very funny stories. I can tell you. One of the debriefings I used to do regularly was with chaplains. And you think they're very spiritual. I did appreciate your prayer. You think they're very spiritual, but they get stressed and they see a lot too. And one of the things we used to do is just sit around and smoke a cigar. And that wasn't to prevent smoking, but it was a coping system for them because they needed relief. But by listening and taking the time with them, it lowered their stress level, made them more comfortable about their experience, so then they could go on and serve better. Generally, a lot of veterans don't feel comfortable about sharing their experiences. So like I said, ask them about the good experiences, and sometimes read the citations on their awards. You'll be amazed. One of the things that I always wonder about a service member when they come in is why did they join? Now, I've only been around at the end of the Vietnam era service, but my service started in peacetime. So a lot of us in the volunteer forces joined because either we needed a job, or in my case, I needed some discipline. Some wanted to get the education, and some had a sense of duty and greater purpose other than themselves. So again, by honoring them like you've done today, thanking them for their service, inviting them to share, and remembering that these people, generally veterans, if you notice, they don't stop serving. They serve as commanders, they serve as community leaders, they serve in many capacities beyond their military service, because they think of the we in team, not the I. They do civic duties and help others, and one of the ways that we can honor them is by helping others, and I say voting. Voting is a civic duty that honors veterans. Engaging in making a world better place for each of us. That's one of the ways you can honor your veterans. The other point of re-entry into society for veterans from war, some feel pride, some feel shame, others guilt, a lot of conflict, and a lot of feeling alone. That's one of the things we try to deal with where I work for. But they benefit when they meet and socialize soldiers and sailors, and they share those experiences. A lot of that shame and guilt goes away, and they feel comfortable in sharing their experiences. Their sense of duty. I represent the Veterans Administration, an element thereof, a vet center. But the Veterans Administration, even though we need to be held accountable for our mistakes, has served veterans for years. And Abraham is serving those who have served us and bared the burden. The Veterans Administration provides health care, psychological care, comfort, housing. They provide a lot. And as Congressman Waters says, hold us accountable. But we do a lot of good things for our veterans. At the Vet Center, just to highlight our services, at the Vet Center we provide help, we care for them, we broker services, and what that means is connecting them to other service providers. The VA doesn't provide everything, but there are a lot of providers out there that are providing different services. We advocate for them. I advocate a lot of times through my congressman to take up their case, either it be a benefits case or just a local case. I even advocated with the county officials to help a veteran deal with his tax, his home taxes. So as a vet center, we do a lot of things. We also provide psychological treatment. We provide it in groups, individuals, couples, for military sexual trauma victims and survivors, and bereaved family members. Even bereaved family members a vet center sees. Our healthcare system in the VA, in certain aspects, is second to none. When you're a veteran and you go to a VA hospital, we're one of the first that has a national treatment record. So if you go to the VA in West LA and then move all the way across the country, they can pull up your records. That's a big deal. We're the first to do it. And those kind of records, by following you, you don't have to hand carry them. That provides continuity of care. So when you're going either on vacation, and I've actually had a vet go on vacation to Hawaii, he was lucky, but he had a major trauma. They evacuated him to Tripler on the main an island of Oahu, and they took care of him because they knew exactly what was going on with him because of his medical record, and he got the service he needed. So that national record saves lives. And some of the best things the VA does, not just for veterans, but for healthcare in general, they do a lot of studies of investigating what works. So we don't waste time on working on and doing things that don't work for veterans. And that's a continual process. It is my honor to represent the Veterans Administration because I saw it as an extension of my service as an Army officer. That extension was I was able to provide service for my fellow soldiers as they return home, as they struggle through their day-to-day lives, hopefully with a smile, a cup of coffee, some water, cookies that are donated by veterans like yourself, that I can lighten their load a little bit, just a little, so they can go a little bit further. My hope is what you take away from this speech is, how can we be better citizens? What is our duty, civic, and our responsibility to each other? Where is our honor, in deed and in deed and in word? And what is your willingness to sacrifice, not for just self-gratification, but also the betterment of our community, our nation, our families and friends, but more importantly right now, our fellow men and women in our everyday life that we meet. And since we do have a large homeless population here in LA County, our veterans as well as just generally homeless, that's how you can honor a veteran, because we fought for a lot of things, and we fought for this nation, and a lot of them lost their lives for other people to experience what we do. So I hope you take away from this day some of that you can give back, and that is another way of honoring veterans. Thank you.